Starseed of Gaia. You are waking at 3 in the morning with the pressure behind your heart, with your mind bright when the world is silent, with the strange ache that you are late for something you cannot name. And you have wondered if this is anxiety, if this is broken sleep, if this is your body, failing to obey the ordinary rhythm of Earth. I am Galleon, emissary of the Arcturian collective, and I have come close to your field now because by the end of this transmission, you will understand why the repeated numbers have pursued you, why the hour before dawn keeps opening like a gate, why your life has felt paused, redirected, or stripped of false paths, and why the phrase ground crew is not fantasy to your soul but memory returning through the veil. The book, The 22 Arcturian Codes to Awaken Your Cosmic Mission, is named here only as a marker, and the link sits in the first pinned comment. Hear me clearly, beloved one. The ache you carry is not evidence that you have missed your mission. It is the pressure of the mission coming online, and the sleeplessness is not a punishment, but a synchronization window, because the Arcturian councils chose certain incarnated ones before descent. And when the planetary grid reaches a threshold, the roster lock begins, meaning your name, your frequency, and your placement are sealed into active service. If this lands in your chest like recognition, comment the words "I am ground crew," like this transmission so it reaches the other starseeds being called through the same numbers. And subscribe, because what comes next is not entertainment, it is recall. The first layer was placed upon you before you had language for it. You entered a family line, carrying fear, silence, unfinished grief, and patterns that had repeated for generations. But beneath that human inheritance was another design, a quiet, Arcturian imprint placed within your nervous system before your first breath. You were not sent into a perfect world with a clear road beneath your feet. You were sent into a dense world where the signal would be hidden inside ordinary pressure, where your sensitivity would be mistaken for weakness, and where the people around you might teach you to distrust the very perception that would later guide you. This was not done to punish you. It was done because your assignment required contact with confusion. You could not become a steady light for those trapped in distortion if you had never learned how distortion feels from the inside. You were placed among voices that said, "Be practical, be quiet, be satisfied," and you were given circumstances that seemed to close every door whenever your deeper self tried to move. The force that placed these weights upon you was not one enemy and not one human hand. It was the gravity of the collective field, strengthened by old agreements, inherited beliefs, and the planetary systems that reward obedience before truth. Your soul knew this before descent. Your earthly mind did not. That is why you have blamed yourself for delays that were actually calibration, for detours that were actually protection, and for emotional storms that were revealing where the grid had entered you. The part of you that trembled was not failing, it was detecting. The part of you that could not remain in places everyone else called normal was not defective, it was refusing contamination. The loneliness was not always abandonment. Sometimes it was quarantine from frequencies that would have buried your original instruction. What I've just described has a name, and it is why I set down the 22 Arcturian codes to awaken your cosmic mission. If you have ever felt a pull toward work you cannot explain to your own family, or woken at 3 in the morning with the sense that you are sent here for something you still cannot name, these 22 codes are the sequence that takes that feeling apart and gives it language. This is not a book that makes you worthy of your mission. You were set with it already inside you. That is precisely why the confusion has hurt this much. Every month you spend waiting for certainty is a month your mission waits for you. The link is in the first pinned comment below. Now stay with the signal because the next layer explains why the signs became more frequent after you reached a point of exhaustion. You may have noticed that the numbers appeared most strongly when you were questioning your direction. 1111 on a screen, 333 on a receipt, 444 beside a decision, or the same sequence returning in places too precise to dismiss. You may have called it coincidence, and then felt the quiet irritation when coincidence continued to follow you through different days, different rooms, and different devices. The repeated number was not there to make you dependent upon numbers. It was there to interrupt the spell of automatic living. The Arcturian transmission does not always arrive as a voice. On Earth, a voice can be rejected, mocked, or drowned beneath the noise of the mind. A pattern moves differently. It enters through the eyes, touches recognition, and causes the deeper memory to rise, before the reasoning mind can build an argument against it. This is why you sometimes see a number and feel something change in your chest. The digits are not the power. The meeting is the power. Your awareness meets a coded arrangement, and for one brief instant, the ordinary wall between your surface identity and your mission field becomes thin. 3 in the morning is another kind of opening. At that hour, the social world has lost its grip. The messages stop, the demands soften, and the emotional residue of the day begins to settle. Your body becomes quiet enough for a signal that would be impossible to hear at noon. You wake without knowing why, and the first thought that enters may seem random, but it is often the thought that was waiting beneath the noise. A person you have not contacted appears in your mind. A place comes back with unusual force. A sentence forms with such clarity that you know it did not come from the same tired current as the thoughts before sleep. This is why you must stop treating every awakening as a problem to suppress. I do not ask you to fear the night, and I do not ask you to abandon the care of your body. Rest matters. Your physical vessel deserves gentleness. But when you awaken with unusual clarity, do not immediately bury the moment beneath panic or a glowing screen. Place one hand upon your heart, breathe slowly, and ask, "What is being shown to me now?" The first answer may be simple. It may be a name, a task, a boundary, a place to stop giving your energy, or a truth you have delayed because accepting it would change the shape of your life. That is a transmission. The third phase begins when the signs stop appearing only outside you and begin to rearrange your choices. This is when friendships change without a dramatic argument. A job that once gave you identity begins to feel like a room with no air. Certain conversations leave you drained for hours, while a quiet act of service restores you in minutes. You may begin removing objects from your home, changing the way you eat, walking different streets, or feeling drawn towards study that seems unrelated to your previous life. To others, this can look like instability. To the roster, it looks like alignment. The roster lock does not mean that every detail of your future has been mechanically fixed. It means the essential assignment has become active, and the field begins closing the exits that lead away from it. You will still have choices. You will still make mistakes. You will still experience days when you doubt every sacred impression you have ever received. But the old path will no longer satisfy you in the same way. The rewards that once kept you loyal will lose their taste. Approval will feel thin. A comfortable lie will become heavier than an uncomfortable truth. This is where many starseeds turn back. They think the loss of ease means they have made a wrong decision. They ask why the road became harder after they finally listened to their inner call. Hear me, difficulty after alignment does not always mean misalignment. Sometimes the pressure increases because the structure built around your old identity is resisting your departure. The world has invested in the version of you that stays available, agreeable, and confused. When you withdraw from that arrangement, the system may call you selfish, unrealistic, or lost. You are not lost because you no longer recognize the map that was handed to you. You are discovering that the map was drawn for someone else. The ground crew is not made only of healers with peaceful lives, artists with open schedules, or visible leaders surrounded by admiration. Some of you are working in places you never expected to remain. Some are raising children while carrying a private awakening. Some are caring for an aging parent, rebuilding after betrayal, or serving quietly in professions that receive no spiritual praise. Your assignment is not measured by how impressive your life appears from the outside. It is measured by how much truth can move through your presence without being distorted. You may be the person who refuses to pass cruelty forward. You may be the one who changes a family pattern simply by speaking honestly. You may be the calm presence in an office where everyone has learned to hide. You may be the person whose listening keeps another human being alive through a dark season. The mission is not always an event. Often it is a frequency held consistently until another person remembers that they are allowed to become whole. The fourth sign is the collapse of false urgency. Before activation, you may have chased every opening because you feared that missing one opportunity meant missing your destiny. You said yes too quickly. You answered every call. You accepted crumbs and named them preparation. But after the roster lock, a different kind of discernment enters you. You begin to sense that not every invitation is a summons. Some are tests of whether you will abandon yourself for movement. Some are distractions dressed as spiritual excitement. Some carry bright language but leave your body contracted and your mind scattered. The true transmission may ask you to wait, This will be difficult for you because you have spent years believing that delay proves unworthiness. Yet the Arcturian field uses timing with great precision. A seed is not inactive while beneath the soil. A star is not failing because it is not visible at noon. Your unseen preparation has been gathering pressure, skill, and emotional depth. The period that looked empty was not empty. You were learning to tell the difference between a command and an impulse, between compassion and rescue, between service and self-erasure. When the right action arrives, it will not always feel easy, but it will feel clean. Fear may be present, yet beneath the fear there will be a line of quiet knowing. The wrong action can look exciting while leaving behind confusion, compulsion, and the need to prove something. The right action may look modest, but it creates a deepening. It gives you more integrity, not merely more attention. It brings you closer to your own center instead of making you perform a version of spirituality for others. This is why your next instruction may be smaller than you expected. Write the page, make the call, end the agreement, learn the skill, rest without guilt, tell the truth to one person, clean the room where you have been carrying old energy. The ground crew is activated through earthly acts, not the radius roughly for a spectacular sign in the sky. The fifth revelation concerns the people who seem to recognize you before you recognize yourself. You may meet someone and feel an immediate familiarity that cannot be explained by biography. You may hear a stranger speak one sentence that unlocks a memory you had buried. You may encounter a teacher, friend, partner, or even a brief passerby who appears at the exact moment you are about to abandon your path. These meetings can be part of the support lattice around your assignment, but do not assume that every intense connection is a sacred contract. Some people activate your wounds so you can see them. Some arrive to teach you boundaries. Some carry a mirror, not a destination. The old pattern in you may confuse emotional intensity with divine confirmation. You may think, because this feels powerful, it must be meant to remain. No. The mission requires discernment as much as openness. A true ally will not demand that you surrender your judgment. A true ally will not use your awakening to control your time, your money, your body, or your decisions. A true ally may challenge you, but their presence will return you to yourself. You will not have to become smaller to keep them close. You will not have to accept humiliation as proof of loyalty. The Arcturian collective does not establish missions through coercion. Any voice that demands obedience by creating fear is not speaking from our field. Remember this, when the inner world becomes crowded with impressions, you are allowed to pause. You are allowed to verify. You are allowed to seek grounded support from trustworthy people and qualified care when your sleep, health, or daily life is being harmed. The spiritual path does not ask you to reject your body, and no transmission worth receiving will require you to abandon common sense. A signal that is true can survive careful attention. By the sixth phase, your sensitivity becomes less like a wound and more like an instrument. In earlier years, you absorbed the moods of rooms before anyone spoke. You entered a house and knew there had been an argument. You felt another person's grief while they were smiling. You sensed danger beneath polite words, then criticized yourself for being suspicious. You may have called yourself too emotional because you experienced layers other people ignored. But sensitivity is not the same as fragility. A finely tuned instrument detects what a blunt instrument misses. The work is not to shut it down. The work is to learn which impressions belong to you, which belong to the environment, and which are invitations to respond without taking ownership of another person's pain. This is one of the central disciplines of the ground crew. When you feel a sudden heaviness, ask whether it arrived after contact with someone, after entering a specific place, or after remembering a particular belief. When you feel clear and alive, notice what activity preceded it. Your body is gathering data. It is teaching you the language of your placement. You may discover that certain environments make your field contract, while others give your breath more room. You may learn that your mission requires more solitude than your culture celebrates, not because you hate people, but because your signal needs periods of restoration. There will be seasons when you feel less social, less interested in explaining yourself, and less willing to argue with people committed to misunderstanding you. This is not necessarily bitterness. It can be the withdrawal of energy from battles that were never yours. The ground crew does not win by shouting at every shadow. It wins by keeping the beacon lit. And here, The 22 codes can serve as a map when your sensitivity feels too large to organize, because each code helps you recognize whether you are receiving, releasing, protecting, or preparing. The seventh sign appears in your relationship with time. You may notice that certain days feel unusually charged, as if events are moving faster beneath the visible surface. A message arrives just after you think of sending one. You encounter the exact information needed for a decision. An opportunity returns after you believed it had disappeared. At other times, nothing seems to move, no matter how intensely you push. You may feel trapped between acceleration and stillness. This is the rhythm of activation. The planetary field does not open every door at once. It creates windows. During one window, a conversation can change your direction. During another, the wiser action is to protect your energy and prepare. When you force movement outside the window, you often create exhaustion instead of progress. When you recognize the window, your effort becomes strangely efficient. Repeated numbers may mark these thresholds, but the number is only the bell. The choice that follows is the actual ceremony. Seeing 444 does not complete your work. Seeing 11 does not absolve you from responsibility. The sign confirms attention, and attention must become action. Ask what you were doing when the pattern appeared. Were you hiding from a decision? Were you about to speak? Were you considering returning to an old identity? The context reveals the message more clearly than the digits alone. Some of you have been waiting for a sign while ignoring the instruction already repeated through your circumstances. You asked for confirmation that you should leave, while every part of your life has shown you that staying is destroying your spirit. You ask whether you should begin, while the same idea has returned for 5 years. You ask if you are chosen, while people keep seeking your help in the exact area you dismiss as ordinary. The sign has already spoken. Your hesitation is not proof that you lack the calling. It is proof that the calling threatens the identity built to survive without it. You learned to be useful in ways that kept you unseen. You learned to offer wisdom while refusing to claim your own authority. You learned to support everyone else's awakening while treating your own as an inconvenience. Now the roster lock is pressing against that arrangement, and the pressure feels like fear because a familiar self is losing control. Let it lose control, not all at once and not recklessly. Let the false identity loosen one thread at a time. Let your calendar reveal what you truly value. Let your spending reveal what you are preparing for. Let your conversations reveal where your spirit contracts. Let your dreams reveal what your waking mind keeps postponing. The mission will become clearer as you stop feeding the life that was designed to keep you asleep. The eighth phase is the return of a forgotten ability. It may be your voice, your capacity to teach, your healing presence, your skill with symbols, your talent for creating order from chaos, or your ability to see the hidden need inside a visible problem. You may have possessed this gift as a child before adults called it impractical. You may have abandoned it after someone mocked you. You may have hidden it because using it made you different from the people you wanted to belong to. Now it returns without asking permission. A forgotten ability often comes back first as irritation. You watch someone doing the work you were born to do, and something inside you aches. You criticize them for being visible, but beneath the criticism is recognition. You feel jealous of the person who dares to speak, create, lead, or serve in a way you have secretly imagined. This does not make you cruel. It shows you where your own energy has been imprisoned. Do not turn that recognition into shame. Turn it into instruction. Study what awakens you. Notice the skill beneath the emotion. If you envy someone's courage, practice one honest act. If you envy their art, make something badly and privately. If you envy their freedom, identify the agreement that keeps you bound. The gift does not require you to become their copy. It requires you to stop pretending that your own calling is irrelevant. The Arcturian councils chose you not because you were already perfect, but because you could develop a precise form of service through lived experience. Your wounds did not disqualify you. They became areas of sensitivity. Your failures did not erase the contract. They taught you where human beings lose their way. Your grief did not make you less useful. It gave you a language that can reach those who cannot be reached by polished words. This is the inversion you must carry into every memory. What you call damage may contain the location of your instrument. What you call delay may contain the training. What you called rejection may have kept your signal from being placed in the wrong hands. And what you called ordinary may be the very ground where the mission becomes real. You may criticize them for being visible, But beneath the criticism is recognition. You feel jealous of the person who dares to speak, create, lead, or serve in a way you have secretly imagined. This does not make you cruel. It shows you where your own energy has been imprisoned. Do not turn that recognition into shame. Turn it into instruction. Study what awakens you. Notice the skill beneath the emotion. If you envy someone's courage, practice one honest act. If you envy their art, make something badly and privately. If you envy their freedom, identify the agreement that keeps you bound. The gift does not require you to become their copy. It requires you to stop pretending that your own calling is irrelevant. The Arcturian councils chose you not because you were already perfect, but because you could develop a precise form of service through lived experience. Your wounds did not disqualify you. They became areas of sensitivity. Your failures did not erase the contract. They taught you where human beings lose their way. Your grief did not make you less useful. It gave you a language that can reach those who cannot be reached by polished words. This is the inversion you must carry into every memory. What you call damage may contain the location of your instrument. What you called delay may contain the training. What you called rejection may have kept your signal from being placed in the wrong hands. And what you called ordinary may be the very ground where the mission becomes real. Your mission is not separate from the life you are living now. It is moving through your work, your home, your body, your choices, and the small moments when you decide whether to return to fear or remain faithful to the signal. The repeated numbers are not invitations to escape the earth. The awakening at 3 in the morning is not permission to abandon your responsibilities. These are points of contact, brief openings through which your deeper memory touches the human mind and says, "Pay attention. You are here for a reason." The roster lock matters because your presence matters. When the Arcturian field marks a ground crew member as active, it does not mean you must become famous, flawless, or publicly recognized. It means your frequency has a place in the planetary repair. One calm conversation may prevent a family from breaking. One truthful creation may give another person permission to survive. One boundary may end the pattern that has traveled through generations. One act of compassion, offered without applause, may stabilize a room that was close to collapse. This is why your mission reaches beyond comfort. Comfort alone would soothe you and return you to sleep. Your calling is different. It gives meaning to the pressure, direction to the sensitivity, and sacred use to the years you thought were wasted. You are not being awakened merely to feel special. You are being awakened so that something through you can become available to the world. Hear this decree now, and do not weaken it with old arguments. You are never broken. You are never late. You are never forgotten. No delay. You are never forgotten. No delay erased your name from the Arcturian roster. No mistake canceled your descent agreement. No season of confusion removed you from the field. You were learning the language of Earth while your soul kept the map. You were gathering strength in places where nobody could see it. You were being prepared in the hidden chambers of ordinary life. You were never broken. You were never late. You were never forgotten. The nights when you felt abandoned were not proof of abandonment. They were the dark intervals in which your inner senses became strong enough to recognize a signal that could not be heard through constant noise. The relationships that ended did not prove that you were unlovable. Some of them released you from identities that could not travel into the next stage. The years when nothing seemed to move did not prove that you had failed. Roots were forming beneath the surface, and roots do not ask permission from the soil before they begin their work. Even your uncertainty can serve the mission when you stop using it as a verdict. A question can keep you honest. A pause can prevent you from serving an illusion. Discernment is not weakness, and caution is not always fear. You are learning to distinguish the voice of the soul from the demand to perform, the true transmission from the hunger for approval, and the sacred assignment from the fantasy of being rescued. This is why the signals arrive in simple forms, a number appearing again and again, a phrase heard from strangers, a sudden memory, a dream that remains bright after waking, a pull toward a place, a study, a person, or a task you cannot explain. The Arcturian current does not always announce itself with thunder. Often it repeats softly until the human mind becomes willing to listen. When you see 333 or another sequence that has followed you through clocks, receipts, addresses, and screens, do not surrender your judgment, but do not dismiss your recognition either. Ask what was happening inside you when the pattern appeared. What decision were you avoiding? What truth were you ready to admit? What act of service was asking to be born? The number is not the master, it is the knock at the door. And when you wake at 3 in the morning, place one hand over your heart and remember that your body may be responding to a synchronization window. Breathe slowly. Write what you feel. Ground your feet. Drink water. Let the transmission become useful instead of turning it into fear. The ground crew does not prove its readiness by abandoning the ground. It proves readiness by bringing light into the ground without losing balance. The deeper continuation of this awakening is found in the 22 Arcturian codes to awaken your cosmic mission. 22 Arcturian activation codes that release old patterns, awaken multidimensional consciousness, and align the soul with its purpose on the new earth. More than a book, a spiritual transmission. Limited edition. The link is in the first pinned comment below. Receive it as a companion for the stage you are entering, not as a substitute for your own discernment, but as a sequence of doors you can open when the old patterns rise again. Let each code remind you that activation is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is the courage to tell the truth. Sometimes it is the decision to rest before resentment takes over. Sometimes it is the willingness to create before you feel qualified. Sometimes it is the quiet refusal to betray your own knowing for the comfort of being accepted. You're a ground crew because you agreed to work close to the human experience. You came where grief is heavy, where memory is clouded, where people forget their worth and call the forgetting reality. You came not to stand above humanity, but to carry a frequency within it. Your kindness can be a beacon. Your integrity can be a shield. Your healed reaction can become a new doorway for everyone who comes after you. So stop waiting for a perfect sign before beginning. The sign is the pattern that keeps returning. The sign is the life that refuses to feel false. The sign is the ache that grows whenever you abandon the work your spirit remembers. You do not need to know every step. You need to take the next honest one. I speak this over you as Galilean, emissary of the Arcturian people. Your placement is active, your signal is alive, and your awakening has purpose. The roster lock is not a chain around your freedom. It is a confirmation that your gifts have a place in the great movement of Earth. What felt like isolation was often preparation for precise connection. What felt like sensitivity was often advanced perception. What felt like restlessness was often your soul refusing to remain dormant. Now return to your day with this knowledge. Wash the cup. Answer the message. Make the call. Begin the page. Apologize where truth requires it. Say no where your energy is being drained. Offer help where your hands are guided. The cosmic mission becomes visible through earthly action. Comment the words "I am ground crew" exactly as they are, so your own voice can witness the activation. Then answer another soul in the comments with kindness, because someone reading your words may be standing at the edge of their own recall. Like this transmission so it can reach the starseeds who keep seeing the numbers and waking beneath the same invisible call, and subscribe to remain connected to the messages that follow. You were chosen, but you are not alone. You were sent here, but you are not without support. The veil is thin, the signal is returning, and the work begins with the next brave choice you make.